The tension in the Family Feud studio was palpable that October afternoon in 2019, though no one could quite explain why. Steve Harvey, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit with gold pinstripes, was preparing for what seemed like another routine taping of Family Feud. But 66-year-old Kavitha Reddy from Bethesda, Maryland, stood backstage with secrets that weighed heavier than the elaborate gold jewelry adorning her small frame. Around her neck hung a peculiar pendant, a Bronze Star medal that had been carefully incorporated into a traditional Indian necklace surrounded by rubies and emeralds in a design that told two stories. One of service to America and one of a heritage that made that service possible. The Mang Tika on her forehead had been worn by her mother during India's independence celebrations in 1947, but today it would witness something far different. A desperate attempt to save the lives of 23 Afghan interpreters who had served alongside American forces and were now marked for death. In her purse was a folder marked classified until just 6 months ago, containing commendation letters she couldn't show anyone for 28 years. What was about to unfold would leave Steve Harvey speechless, make a studio audience weep, and launch an international rescue operation that would make headlines around the world. Kavitha adjusted the pallu of her deep purple Mysore silk sari, its border embroidered with golden peacocks that seemed to shimmer under the studio lights. Her choice of purple was deliberate. It was the color of the Purple Heart, though few would make that connection. The heavy gold bangles on her wrists, 21 in total, each represented 1 year of her classified service to the United States military. Her nose ring, connected by a delicate chain to her ear, was a family heirloom from Bangalore, but the small American flag pin she'd attached to the chain was her own addition, a subtle declaration of her dual loyalties that had defined her entire adult life. The Reddy family from Maryland had just defeated the Patterson family from Ohio in the main game, winning with a score of 312 points. It had been a close match, with Kavitha providing several crucial answers that surprised even her own family members. They had no idea their soft-spoken grandmother, who they knew as a retired government employee, had spent 2 decades in military intelligence facilities, translating intercepted communications in Hindi, Urdu, Kannada, Tamil, and 4 other Indian regional languages. Her son Rajesh had gone first in fast money, scoring a respectable 138 points. He'd missed the number 1 answer on 3 questions, but had done well enough to put them in a strong position. Now, Kavitha needed just 62 points to win the $20,000, money that wasn't for her, though no one in the studio knew that yet. As she walked to the fast money podium, her anklets, usually worn by Indian brides, made a soft tinkling sound. She'd worn them every day since 1991, not for tradition, but because the sound reminded her of the communications equipment in the underground bunker where she'd worked during Desert Storm, helping to identify potential threats to American forces by monitoring enemy communications in languages most Americans didn't even know existed in the region. "Kavitha," Steve Harvey said warmly, as she took her position, his characteristic smile brightening the stage. "You look absolutely beautiful. That sari is stunning. And that jewelry, there's something special about it, isn't there?" Kavitha touched the Bronze Star pendant reflexively, a gesture she'd done thousands of times over the years when she couldn't talk about why she'd received it. "Every piece tells a story, Mr. Harvey. Some stories just take longer to tell than others." Steve's experienced intuition picked up on the weight in her words, but he continued with his usual warm energy. "Well, you're in great shape here. Rajesh got you 138 points. You only need 62 to win that $20,000. Very doable." "I have to win, Mr. Harvey," Kavitha said quietly, her voice carrying an urgency that made Steve pause. "Lives depend on it." Steve assumed she was being dramatic about family financial needs, something he'd seen many times before. "Well, let's make it happen then. 20 seconds on the clock, please." As the timer set, Kavitha's mind flashed to the encrypted message she'd received 3 weeks ago through a network of veterans she'd stayed in touch with. 23 interpreters who had worked with U.S. forces in Afghanistan, People whose linguistic skills had saved countless American lives were being systematically hunted. These weren't just any interpreters. They were ones she had personally trained in intelligence-gathering techniques during her final years of service, when she'd been brought out of semi-retirement after 9/11 to help prepare language specialists for the War on Terror. "All right, Kavitha, here we go," Steve announced. "Name something people hide from others." "Secrets," Kavitha answered immediately, the irony not lost on her. "Name a government building people visit." "Pentagon," she responded, remembering her countless visits there. "What age do most people retire?" 65. "Name something that requires security clearance." "Military intelligence," she said, her voice catching slightly. "Name something people sacrifice for their country." "Life," she whispered, thinking of the interpreters who might not survive the month. The buzzer sounded, and Steve noticed the tears forming in Kavitha's eyes. "You okay there, Kavitha?" She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The weight of what she was about to reveal, the classification that had just been lifted 6 months ago, allowing her to finally talk about her service, was overwhelming. "Let's see how you did," Steve said, his tone gentler now. "You said secrets for something people hide from others," survey said. The board lit up. Number one answer, 42 points. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Kavitha remained still, her hand pressed against the Bronze Star pendant. "Great start. You said Pentagon for a government building people visit." Number one answer, 31 points. Steve's eyebrows rose. "Kavitha, you've already won. You've got 73 points and you needed 62. But Kavitha wasn't celebrating. Her expression remained grave, almost haunted. "Let's continue," Steve said, curious now. 65 for retirement age. Number one answer, 28 points. The audience was getting excited. 3 number one answers in a row was exceptional. Military intelligence for something requiring security clearance. Number one answer, 37 points. Steve turned to Kavitha with amazement. "This is incredible. You have 4 number one answers. You said life for what people sacrifice for their country." "If this is number one, you'll have achieved perfection," survey said. The board revealed number one answer, 44 points. The studio erupted in celebration, but Kavitha suddenly collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Steve immediately rushed to her side, helping her stand, his celebration turning to concern. "Kavitha, honey, what's wrong? You just achieved something incredible." Through her tears, Kavitha pulled out her phone and showed Steve a photograph. It was a group of people in military fatigues, their faces blurred except for hers, standing in what was clearly a military facility. "Mr. Harvey," she began, her voice shaking. "For 21 years, I was a classified military intelligence translator. I can finally talk about it because my classification was lifted 6 months ago. During the Gulf War, during Afghanistan, during Iraq, DAM, I listened to enemy communications. I translated conversations that saved American lives. This Bronze Star," she touched her pendant, "I received it for identifying a planned ambush that would have killed 43 American soldiers." The studio had gone completely silent. Steve's expression shifted from concern to profound respect. "But that's not why I'm here," Kavitha continued. "The 23 people in this photo are Afghan interpreters I trained between 2001 and 2005. I taught them not just to translate, but to identify coded language, to recognize threat patterns. They saved hundreds, maybe thousands of American lives." She paused, gathering strength. 3 weeks ago, I got word that the Taliban has a list with their names. They're being hunted, Mr. Harvey. Them and their families. 7 have already been killed. The others are in hiding, but they need money to escape, to get to safety, to apply for the visas America promised them but hasn't delivered. Steve was visibly shaken. "These are people who helped our military?" "They didn't just help," Kavitha said firmly. "They risked everything. Mohammed, he's 28 now, has 3 children. He translated for Navy SEALs for 6 years. Fatima, EI. She's one of the few female interpreters faced death threats daily just for working with Americans. She has a daughter with special needs who can't get medical care while they're in hiding. She pulled out a folder from her purse, her hands trembling. These are commendation letters from generals, from CIA directors, from soldiers whose lives they saved. But now America has forgotten them. The visa process takes years, and they don't have years. They don't even have months. So this $20,000, Steve began, will get 3 families to safety immediately, Kavitha finished. I've already spent my entire retirement savings getting 5 families out. My husband passed away last year. He never knew what I really did for all those years. His life insurance, our savings for traveling the world together in retirement, all gone to save these interpreters. This $20,000 will save 3 more families. That's 12 lives, Mr. Harvey. 12 people who risked everything for America. She looked directly at the cameras. I couldn't talk about my service for 28 years. My own children didn't know what I did. They thought I was just a government translator working on trade documents. But these interpreters, they can't hide what they did. Everyone knows they helped Americans. That's why they're being hunted. Steve was struggling to maintain his composure. Kavitha, you're telling me you were a spy? Not a spy, she corrected gently. A linguistic intelligence analyst. I sat in secure facilities, sometimes underground bunkers, wearing headphones for 12-hour shifts, listening to intercepted communications. During Desert Storm, I identified supply routes that allowed our forces to cut off enemy resources. During Afghanistan operations, I translated conversations that revealed training camp locations. She touched each of her 21 bangles. Each of these represents a year of service. But the hardest part wasn't the long hours or the pressure. It was training those young interpreters, knowing I was sending them into danger, promising them America would protect them if they helped us. And now, her voice broke completely. Steve pulled her into a supportive embrace, his Navy suit a stark contrast to her purple cerise. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve addressed the audience and cameras, his voice thick with emotion. We're witnessing something extraordinary here. This woman, this grandmother who looks like she should be teaching grandchildren how to make curry, was actually protecting our nation for 2 decades. And now she's spending everything she has to save the lives of people who helped our military. He turned back to Kavitha. Tell me more about these interpreters. Kavitha wiped her tears, steadying herself. There's Ahmad. He's 32 now. He translated for Marine units in Helmand Province for 7 years. The Taliban killed his brother last month as a warning. He's hiding in a basement with his wife and 4 children, moving every few days. They're running out of money for food. She continued. Nazreen is 29. She translated for female soldiers who needed to interact with Afghan women and children. The Taliban considers her a double traitor for helping Americans and for being a woman who worked. She hasn't been outside in 2 months. Her neighbors are hiding her. But if she's found, how do you know all this? Steve asked. We created a network, Kavitha explained. Veterans who worked with interpreters, former intelligence officers like me, some active-duty military who can't officially help but pass along information. We're trying to save as many as we can, but it's expensive. False documents, safe houses, bribes at checkpoints, transportation to neighboring countries, visa applications. It all costs money. She pulled out another document. This is from General Morrison, who commanded forces in Afghanistan. He wrote, The interpreters trained by Kavitha Reddy's program were instrumental in our mission's success. Their cultural insights and linguistic precision saved countless American lives. We owe them a debt that can never be fully repaid. But we're not repaying it, Kavitha said bitterly. We're abandoning them. Steve made a decision in that moment. Kavitha, you've won your $20,000. But this story doesn't end here. The Steve Harvey Foundation is going to match that amount. That's $40,000 for your rescue operations. The audience erupted in applause, but Steve raised his hand for silence. And I'm going to use my platform to tell this story. America needs to know about these heroes, both you and the interpreters you're trying to save." Kavitha was sobbing again, but now her family had joined her on stage. Her son Rajesh, her daughter Priya, her teenage grandchildren, all learning for the first time the true extent of their grandmother's service. "Mom," Rajesh said, his voice breaking, "you were military intelligence? All those years?" "I couldn't tell you," Kavitha whispered. "It was classified. Even your father only knew I worked for the government. When I missed your school plays, your games, when I couldn't explain why I had to leave suddenly for weeks at a time, it was all classified." Her granddaughter, 16-year-old Ananya, stepped forward. "Grandma, you're a hero." "No," Kavitha said firmly. "The heroes are the interpreters who walked into war zones every day, who faced their own people, calling them traitors, who still believed America would keep its promise to protect them. I just sat in a safe room with headphones. They risked everything." What happened next was unprecedented in Family Feud history. An audience member stood up and announced, "I'm a veteran. I served in Afghanistan. Interpreters saved my life twice. I want to contribute $5,000. Another stood, "Former Marine here. I'll give $3,000. Within minutes, audience members, crew members, and even other contestants were making pledges. The security guard who had checked Kavitha in that morning, a former Army sergeant, pledged $1,000 from his savings. When the episode aired 2 weeks later, it created a national sensation. Number Save Our Interpreters began trending within hours. The clip of Kavitha's perfect fast money round and her revelation went viral globally. News networks picked up the story. The Washington Post ran a front-page article titled, "The Grandmother Who Was a Secret Weapon." Within 48 hours of the airing, donations to the Interpreter Rescue Fund Kavitha had secretly been managing exceeded $2 million. Military veterans organizations mobilized. Tech billionaires who had never served but were moved by the story wrote six-figure checks. Even celebrities who rarely engaged in political issues felt compelled to help. But the most significant response came from Congress. Several representatives and senators, both Democrats and Republicans, cited Kavitha's Family Feud appearance in speeches demanding expedited visa processing for Afghan interpreters. The Kavitha Reddy Act was proposed, which would fast-track visas for interpreters who had served with U.S. forces. 3 days after the episode aired, Kavitha received a call she never expected. It was from a blocked number, but the voice was familiar. 1. It was her former commanding officer from the Defense Intelligence Agency. "Kavitha," he said, "I've been authorized to tell you that your appearance has prompted a review of interpreter evacuation protocols. We're activating emergency procedures. Your 23 interpreters have been moved to the priority list." Within a month, all 23 interpreters and their families were evacuated to safety. The first family to arrive in America was Mohammed's. When they landed at Dulles International Airport, Kavitha was there to greet them, wearing the same purple sari and Bronze Star pendant she'd worn on Family Feud. Mohammed, a man hardened by years of war, fell to his knees and wept when he saw her. "Madam Kavitha," he said in accented English, "you kept your promise. When America forgot us, you remembered." Steve Harvey personally attended the arrival of the fifth family to be evacuated. He had stayed in touch with Kavitha, using his platform to maintain pressure on authorities to expedite the visa process. When he saw the children of the interpreters playing with Kavitha's grandchildren, all of them American now, he broke down in tears. "Kavitha," he said, "when you came on my show, I thought I was going to host another fun family game. Instead, I became part of an international rescue mission. You didn't just achieve a perfect score in fast money. You achieved something perfect in humanity." The story took another turn when the Department of Defense, in a rare move, officially declassified more of Kavitha's service record. It revealed that she had been instrumental in preventing 3 major terrorist attacks on American soil through her translation work. Though the details remained classified, she was invited to the Pentagon to receive a Distinguished Public Service Award, the highest honor the Department of Defense can bestow on a civilian. At the ceremony, Kavitha wore her purple sari again, the bronze star pendant polished to a shine. The Secretary of Defense, in his speech, said, "Mrs. Reddy represents the best of America, an immigrant who used her unique skills to protect her adopted homeland, and who never forgot those who served alongside her." But Kavitha's response was characteristic of her humility. "I'm not the hero here. The heroes are the young men and women who walked into hostile territory every day with our troops, knowing they were marked for death just for helping us. I just did what any decent person would do. I tried to keep a promise." The impact of Kavitha's Family Feud appearance rippled far beyond the interpreter crisis. It sparked a national conversation about the role of immigrants in national security. Language programs at universities saw massive increases in enrollment. The military began aggressive recruitment of multilingual Americans, especially from immigrant communities. 6 months later, Kavitha was invited back to Family Feud for a special Champions episode. This time, she brought Muhammad's family with her. They were now the extended Reddy family in every way that mattered. Steve Harvey couldn't hide his emotion when he saw them all together. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steve announced, 6 months ago, Kavitha Reddy stood on this stage and achieved a perfect fast money score. But more importantly, she revealed a crisis that America needed to address. Because of her courage in speaking out, 23 interpreter families are now safe. That's 97 lives saved. During the special episode, they revealed that the interpreter families had started a translation service company, using their skills to help American businesses communicate globally. Several of the interpreters were working with law enforcement to help with translation needs. Fatima, the female interpreter Kavitha had mentioned, was enrolled in nursing school, hoping to serve her new country in a different way. The most emotional moment came when Ahmad's 7-year-old daughter, now fluent in English after 6 months in America, ran up to Kavitha and hugged her, saying, "Thank you, Grandma Kavitha, for saving us." Kavitha's story became a case study at military academies and intelligence training facilities. The lesson was simple but profound. Intelligence work isn't just about gathering information. It's about honoring the human bonds formed in service. A year later, a documentary about Kavitha and the interpreters premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, titled The Secret Grandmother. It won the Audience Award and was picked up by Netflix. The film revealed even more about Kavitha's service, including recordings with voices altered for security of some of the intercepted communications she had translated that saved American lives. One recording, from 1991, showed how her translation of a single word, recognizing a regional dialect that changed the meaning from supplies to weapons, had prevented a massive ambush during Desert Storm. Another, from 2003, revealed how her cultural knowledge helped identify a code phrase that led to the prevention of a planned attack on a U.S. base. But the documentary also focused on the interpreters themselves, showing footage from their service in Afghanistan and their new lives in America. Muhammad was shown coaching his son's Little League team. Fatima was filmed taking her citizenship oath. Ahmad was documented opening his own small business, a restaurant serving Afghan and Indian fusion cuisine, with Kavitha as his first customer. The restaurant, named Loyalty's Reward, became a gathering place for veterans and interpreters. On the wall hung a framed photo from Family Feud, the moment Steve Harvey announced Kavitha's perfect score. Below it was a plaque that read, "Sometimes heroes wear combat boots. Sometimes they wear saris. Sometimes they wear both." During a Pentagon event honoring linguistic intelligence analysts, Kavitha was asked to speak. She stood at the podium, wearing her medals openly for the first time. Not just the Bronze Star, but also the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, and several others that had been classified until recently. "For 28 years, she said, I couldn't tell my children why I missed their bedtimes. I couldn't tell my husband why I had nightmares about intercepted conversations describing planned attacks. I couldn't explain why I cried when certain military operations succeeded, knowing my translations had played a part." She continued, "But the hardest part was training those young interpreters, looking into their eager faces, and knowing the danger they would face. I taught them phrases that could save American lives, but I couldn't teach them how to save their own lives when America's mission ended. That's why I went on Family Feud, she said, her voice strong. Not for fame or recognition, but because those interpreters deserved better than abandonment. They deserved what America promised them: safety, freedom, and a chance at the American dream. The audience, filled with military and intelligence officials, gave her a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. 3 years after her Family Feud appearance, Kavitha received a letter that would become her most treasured possession. It was from the daughter of an American soldier whose life had been saved by one of Kavitha's translations in 1993. The soldier had never known who the translator was, only that someone had identified a threat that allowed his unit to avoid an ambush. He had passed away recently, but his daughter had seen the documentary and connected the dots. Dear Mrs. Reddy, the letter read, "Because of you, I had a father. Because of you, I have memories of him walking me down the aisle at my wedding. Because of you, he met his grandchildren. You gave my family 30 extra years with him. Thank you for your service, even if we couldn't thank you for all those years." Kavitha framed the letter next to her Family Feud photo, a reminder that intelligence work's true measure isn't in classifications or clearances, but in lives saved and promises kept. The 23 interpreters Kavitha saved have now helped evacuate hundreds more. They've formed an underground railroad of sorts, using their contacts and knowledge to help other interpreters escape. The fund that started with Kavitha's Family Feud winnings has grown to a multi-million-dollar operation, saving interpreters not just from Afghanistan, but from Iraq and Syria as well. Every year on the anniversary of her Family Feud appearance, Kavitha hosts a gathering at her home in Maryland. Interpreters, veterans, intelligence officers, and their families come together. They share stories, eat Indian and Afghan food, and remember those still in danger. Steve Harvey has attended twice, each time wearing the same Navy suit with gold pinstripes he wore during that fateful taping. At the most recent gathering, Steve asked Kavitha if she ever regretted revealing her secret on national television, exposing herself and potentially making herself a target. Her answer was immediate. "Mr. Harvey, I kept secrets for 28 years to protect America. But sometimes, the most patriotic thing you can do is tell the truth. Those interpreters trusted America with their lives. The least I could do was trust America with my story." She touched her Bronze Star pendant, now worn openly and proudly. "Besides," she added with a smile, "after 28 years of keeping secrets, it felt really good to finally give the #1 answer to, what do people hide from others? The truth." The impact of Kavitha's revelation continues to ripple outward. Military intelligence has implemented new protocols for protecting and evacuating local allies. Language specialists are now given training not just in translation, but in the ethical obligations to those who assist American forces. And somewhere in a secure facility, new linguistic intelligence analysts sit with headphones, knowing that their work matters not just for national security, but for the human lives on both sides of the translation. Kavitha Reddy, the grandmother who shocked Steve Harvey with a perfect fast money score, had done more than win a game show. She had revealed a hidden world of service and sacrifice, saved nearly 100 lives, and reminded America that heroes come in all forms, sometimes wearing combat boots, sometimes wearing saris, and sometimes wearing both, in service of a nation that became home and a homeland that never left her heart. Every piece of her jewelry still tells a story. The Bronze Star pendant of valor recognized, the 21 bangles of years served, the Mong Tika of heritage honored. But now there's a new addition. A small gold pin in the shape of the number 5, representing her 5 perfect answers on Family Feud. It might seem trivial compared to her military honors, but for Kavitha, it represents the moment her 2 lives, the secret one and the public one, finally became whole. The 73-year-old Muhammad, the first interpreter she trained and the last one she saved, summed it up best at the recent gathering. Madam Kavitha didn't just translate languages. She translated courage into action, promises into reality, and secrets into salvation. That's the perfect score that really matters.